admittedly, okay, I don't know how many tangents we're going to go on this show. We've already went on several, but I don't know that I would really be interested in a lot of the PSP games. I've tried to find myself the perfect handheld, because the closest thing I have to an up-to-date handheld is the Game Boy Advance before they went backlit. So, a little bit of a time warp there. At least it's not an original Game Boy, I guess.
I still have my non-backlit Game Boy Advance. They were fairly bulky. They were about as bulky as the Nintendo DS is.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have that many PlayStation Portable games. I have a total of 8, and one of them is just a dual pack of 2 games that I already own. But they were Mega Man, so I had to buy it.
Of course.
I am a huge Mega Man fan.
I think we definitely need to establish that.
I've got to have it. Yes. I've got collectibles, I've got action figures, I've got comic books, I've got the cartoon series that Ruby Spears did. I've got a ton of Mega Man stuff.
He did have a copy of Wily Wars, and for some reason he sold it.
Well, it was the PAL version, and I didn't have a PAL converter. I did hack my Genesis.
Still,
run.
You've got all these other collectibles, but you didn't keep that one simply because you couldn't play it.
That's true. I really should have kept it, but I didn't. I sort of regret selling it, and I sort of don't. It's one of those things that I remember the game. I swear to this day I saw it on an American store's shelf, and everyone tells me that it was never released in the United States. So I'm thinking maybe it was part of a Sega Channel advertisement, because I do know it was on Sega Channel.
Yep.
But I did have a copy of Mega Man The Wily Wars, but it was PAL, so I didn't keep it.
There's a lot of people that would be, why didn't you keep it? But, you know, sometimes there's just some things that you feel more attached to than others. And when it comes to something that may just be the equivalent of a really light paperweight, then with, Mega Man on it, but still, it's a paperweight if you can't use it. Sometimes nostalgia and collectability just isn't worth it. Especially since I'm pretty sure you got at least what you put into it out.
Oh, yes.
In fact, you may have made a profit on that, didn't you?
I didn't make too much of one, but I do think I made like $5. I sold it for about $5 more than what I paid for it, so it wasn't too bad.
At least no harm done.
Yeah.
And you can say that you did own it once.
I did own it at one time, and I did play it on the Sega Channel at somebody's house when I was growing up as a kid, so I did have that experience at least.
I don't know, I should keep up with game news better, especially now that we're doing the podcast.
Me and you both. I used to get most of my gaming news from Electronic Gaming Monthly, but they no longer publish. And I don't like, I'm really weird about this. When it comes to stuff like that, I prefer to have it in a paper format, as a magazine, because that's where I do most of my reading, my time wasting. If I'm on the computer, I'm playing a game, I'm checking email, I'm doing some kind of work, I don't tend to read a whole lot, unless it's a forum of some kind. So I prefer to have my gaming news in paper format.
And I don't think you're really the sort of person to like looking up things constantly on your phone.
No, not really. It's sad because that's why I bought it, and I never use it for that.
Well, it's fair. It's handy when you need it.
Yes.
Speaking of which, and it is kind of actually topical on both fronts, Nintendo Power is publishing their final issue.
Yes, I heard about that. That was sad news. They've been around for as long as I could remember.
I have the first issue. It's kind of ratty. It was not always well taken care of, but I kept up with them pretty faithfully up until about 1992-93, and then not long after that is when you got into it, and you ended up giving me all of your old copies, so I have maybe almost 12 years of Nintendo Power sitting on a bookshelf.
Yes.
I almost have that many years in EGM, too.
Do you still have the Nintendo Power exclusive binders?
No.
They're not binders, they're the ones, the little stands that you put the magazines in.
Sadly not.
Oh. I had 3 or 4 of those at one point.
I'm trying.
I had a 1994 Nintendo Power calendar also. It was the spin wheel one that had pictures for Star Fox and Metroid in them.
No, I've gotten a few of their promotional stuff, like some of the strategy guides and, of course, the legendary free copy of Dragon Warrior. But as far as a lot of the little extras that came along later, I didn't get any of those, and I think that is something that came along in the more mid-90s.
I'm getting most of my collectibles now from Club Nintendo. I buy enough Nintendo games that for the past 2 or 3 years I've managed to maintain a platinum rank. So I have gotten the platinum rewards for the past couple of years. My favorite one was the statue, the Super Mario Brothers statue that came in a question block box. That was pretty nifty. I like that.
I was just about to ask you that very question. What was your favorite promotion?
That was the one. But like I said, I've only had it for the past couple of years, and I know they've done it longer than that. So there's a distinct possibility that I missed out on some really cool stuff.
Easily. But it's good to see the industry in the U.S. start taking up a little more of that type of end, because back in the day, there wasn't a lot of bonus material out there. I mean, there wasn't even so much as soundtracks and art books until at least the PlayStation era that I can remember.
Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo actually did come with a soundtrack.
I do remember that.
I should still have that. It should be in its box. I'll have to check that later.
That's one of the things that made the Game Arts games from Working Designs so popular. Is they generally had really nice boxes full of stuff, like the Lunar games. They had the cloth map and the little art book that was part strategy guide and all sorts of stuff like that. That is something that happened in Japan all the time, but we never really got anything like that over here until more recently. You're seeing a lot more often these days.
Earthbound actually had some collectible stuff in it too, if I remember correctly.
That is debatable. Earthbound had this gigantic box, for one thing. And the whole point of that gigantic box was because it came with one of the Nintendo Power strategy guides for Earthbound. But there was no instruction book. So basically, your controls was learned throughout the game and through the introduction of the strategy guide. The only other thing that could be considered bonus material were the infamous scratch and sniff stickers.
I was hoping you would mention them. Those, I understand, are actually worth a considerable amount of money if you can find a set that has not been used.
They don't have to be used. Those things are... To this day, I have to kind of stay away from that thing because those things do not smell good, which was the point. Because they're scratch and sniff of the many very bizarre characters in the game, and when it's stuff like spicy dogs and, Master Belts, the pile of questionable content, that the game was largely based on its whole attitude, which was something really original at the time. But I will admit, I was actually sick for 2 days the first day I got that thing. And not because I was sitting there scratching and sniffing the thing. No, I was just looking through the book to see what I was supposed to do next, because I was kind of ruining the game for myself. But it was just close enough to those things. They were just making me sick every time. But I'd keep coming back. To Earthbound's credit, it was good enough. I kept coming back, even though the game was making me sick. How's that?
I loved the game. I remember the scratch and sniff stickers because Luke, who I've mentioned already, actually had the copy that he bought from the store, and it had the booklet and the stickers in it. And I remember sniffing those things and thinking they smelled terrible, but it didn't really make me sick. But like I said, it wasn't my copy, so I wasn't around it that often.
Now, it may have been before your time for collecting Nintendo Power, but if I'm not mistaken, they did have a couple of them that they handed out in one of their magazines. It wasn't the full sheet, it was just 1 or 2 of them. The little scratch and sniff stickers. I think they were in the middle of the book or something like that, where they usually keep those cut out posters.
That was before my Nintendo Power time. I don't remember that.
I could be entirely wrong here, folks. My memory is not what it used to be. I'm getting old.
Now, my favorite old issue of Nintendo Power was also not one that I owned. Luke had Nintendo Power subscription as well. And I remember the first time that I played Mega Man X, and that game was awesome. That is... I just can't even explain to you how awesome that game is, but because you played it too.
Yeah.
There was an issue of Nintendo Power that the entire cover was platinum. It was like a silvery, shiny platinum color, and it was to showcase Mega Man X.
Mm-hmm.
And that I thought was one of the coolest things, because it was one of my favorite game series, just memorialized in this platinum color. It was just awesome.
Now, was Mega Man X technically your first real experience with Mega Man, or did you play him a lot on the NES?
I don't remember playing him too much on the NES, but I know that I did, and sadly I don't remember in what order it was that I played them. I remember when I first played Mega Man X, it was at Luke's house because I didn't have a Super Nintendo at the time, and he had rented it, and Mega Man is one of those games that I picked up on. Like, it's a natural game for me. I'm not as good as the speedrunners that you'll see, but I'm much better than the average gamer. And the game was difficult for Luke. He's not much of an action gamer in that respect, and so when I wanted to play the game, he wouldn't let me because he wouldn't shut it off. So he wouldn't have written down any of the passwords, and he would shut it off when he got to a boss door and just turn off the TV and leave the SNES on. And he wouldn't let me play the game because he thought I would get him killed and he would have to play the whole level all over again. And I still bring that up to him to this day because I thought it was funny that lo and behold, I turned out to be better at the game than he was. But Mega Man X was my first experience playing the game was at my friend's house, Luke. And I don't know if I had played the NES copies before that. I do know that he owned them, and I had since bought them. But I don't remember which came first. I couldn't honestly tell you. I want to say X was, but I know I played the old copies also.
My first introduction to Mega Man was actually the original, but this was back in the day before games really had they had a personality, but they were more of still an entertainment device. They didn't have quite the grand stories and stuff they do today. So a lot of the games that we got were from Walmart. My brother and I would pitch in each our $15, and we'd go get ourselves a Konami or a Capcom game because they tended to be a nice even $30. And actually, no, come to think of it, I bought most of those. But anyway, Mega Man I knew nothing about Mega Man. I really didn't have a lot of clue about most games because there was no internet. And most of the publications were kind of rare, too. There was the Nintendo Fun Club, the precursor to Nintendo Power, but I didn't know about it. And I'm not totally sure how far back it went. I don't think it went more than 2 years. So it may not have dated back to like the 1986 era I'm talking about here. And so it was just one of these random $30 games that I got. And it was kind of hard to get some of the schoolwork done because I wanted to keep playing it. Yes, I can't say that it was my favorite game by any means. I loved Mega Man 2. Maybe it was just because it was the first Mega Man I actually beat. I never beat Mega Man 1 back in those days. But it also had some fantastic music, and people who know me know I'm big on the video game music stuff.
Yes.
But I think it's arguably, with a lot of people, one of the best of the Mega Man series. But here's the weird thing. Yeah. Here's the weird thing. I have not bought a Mega Man game besides the first one. I've played almost all of them. I've rented almost all of them. But I just don't know. Me and platformers have never really saw eye to eye. It's not that I'd have a distaste for them. They're just not my cup of tea specifically. I'm more of a fighting game person, even though I'm not particularly good at them. There's something about them. I don't know if it's the characters or just the martial arts or what it is, the competitiveness. I love fighting games. But sports games is kind of on the lower end of the totem pole, and platforms are kind of somewhere in the middle. Because there's some of them I loved. I loved Ape Escape. I loved, wow. I warned you. Here's one of those brain farts. But I love Super Mario 64. There's several others in the 3D and the 2D realm. Super Mario World. I didn't quite get into Sonic too much, but Mega Man, I don't know. I enjoyed them. I beat at least half of what I played. I don't think I beat them all by any means, because some of those are pretty rough.
I will admit that some of the original titles do give me some trouble to this day, but not so much that I tend to punish myself, though. I try to play through without using special weapons. Mm-hmm. So that's where some of that problem comes in.
And some of the games got really cheap. It seems like some of the later X games got really ridiculous with some of their last boss fights. There's one in specific, and I cannot remember which one it is, but I remember watching you, who's a ton better at Mega Man than I am, spending a good hour and a half fighting this final boss. And there was just something about him that admittedly, it was like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning, so that may have had a large part to do with it.
I think that was Mega Man X6. I was playing hard mode, and I believe I was fighting Gate.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that was a difficult boss on hard mode. He had one of the best soundtracks, though. I loved the soundtrack, so I didn't mind wasting an hour, trying to beat the guy. I do enjoy the music for his battle.
That was a triumphant moment when you did.
Yes.
As I don't think you usually had that much trouble with him. That's why I'm thinking it probably had something to do with the early, even though it was on hard difficulty.